I was a cop haunted by a killer from beyond the grave. You won't believe what I discovered. I never should have opened that door. A simple turn of the handle had ruined everything. 1 second I was staring at the peeling wallpaper of my little apartment, the candles flickering, casting shadows that danced across the room. The next, I was standing in a nightmare. It felt like the air had thickened. The cold wrapped around me like a shroud, sinking into my bones. My day had started like any other. I brewed my coffee, the fragrant steam swirling up towards my face. I could hear the city waking up outside my window, but it was all just white noise to me. I was a cop, after all. I had seen it all. The blood, the tears, the pain. Every day brought its own horror, but nothing could prepare me for what lurked beyond that door. As I pushed it open, a rush of darkness enveloped me. It was a tangible thing, heavy and suffocating. I felt a chill race down my spine, like icy fingers tracing along my back. Whispers floated through the air, words in shadow. I couldn't make them out, but they wrapped around me, pulling tighter and tighter. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the hallway. My heart raced, thumping against my chest like a drum. Did I imagine it? No. Something was wrong. I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to turn back, but curiosity drew me in. Things began to move. The furniture creaked, the pictures on the wall tilted as though something unseen was watching and shifting. A sickening feeling churned in my stomach. A shadow flitted past, just at the edge of my vision. I turned quickly, but nothing was there. I could hear my own breath, ragged and sharp. It filled the silence, punctuating the tension like a warning. My hands trembled as I reached for the light switch. I felt the electric chill crawl up my arm. My fingers hesitated just above the switch. What if I found something? Or worse, what if I didn't? But in that moment of doubt, the whispering grew louder, more insistent. My skin prickled, each sound making my heart thunder louder, drowning out all rational thought. And then I saw it. A figure, barely visible through the thick shadows, just standing there. My breath caught in my throat. Terror coursed through me like ice. I should have run, should have yelled, but I was frozen, caught in the grip of pure fear. The figure shifted slightly, a hint of recognition sparking in the depths of its eyes. It felt familiar, yet alien, like a memory I couldn't grasp, and just like that, the world around me seemed to fracture. I could hear a door slamming somewhere down the hall, the thunderous sound reverberating in my head. I stumbled backward, adrenaline coursing through me. I would never forget that face. It haunted me. Even after it vanished back into the shadows, would I uncover the truth behind the darkness? What horror awaited me next? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. With my heart pounding, I stumbled backward into the safety of my apartment, slamming the door against the encroaching shadows. I pressed my back against the cool surface, gasping for breath, the image of that figure etched in my mind like a nightmare refusing to fade away. I could hear that unholy whispering still lingering just beyond, swirling around my ears, taunting me. It was as if the darkness had taken on a life of its own. The hairs on my arms stood on end. I took a moment to gather myself, clenching my fists, fighting against the urge to flee. I was a cop. I needed to confront this. Wrapping my trembling fingers around the handle of my service weapon, I forced myself to step away from the door. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Could it have been a ghost? Vision of a past life? Or was it just the madness creeping in? I couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that I was being watched. The thick air, heavy with anticipation, seemed to close in around me. There was something beyond that door, and it craved my attention. Gritting my teeth, I turned and slowly pushed it open once again. The darkness swallowed me whole. I stepped into the hallway, the overhead light buzzing erratically above me, casting long, creeping shadows that twisted and slithered across the walls. I braced myself as I moved forward, meticulously searching for any signs of life or an explanation. I could still hear the whispers, murmuring the fragments of my past while echoing with a sinister urging, leading me deeper into the abyss. It felt like I was walking through a memory, yet every detail chilled me to the core. As I moved down the corridor, I noticed something bizarre: pictures hanging on the walls that hadn't been there before. They were grainy, capturing images manipulated with a grotesque distortion. Each frame unveiled a scene I both recognized and wished to forget. A crime scene, an anguished victim, and oh God, was that me? My own face, twisted in a mixture of horror and confusion. I staggered back, my heart racing, as a cold gust of wind swept through the hall, extinguishing the flickering light and momentarily plunging me into a darkness so profound that I felt it wrap around my throat. I fumbled for the gun, its weight comforting against my palm, yet it felt utterly useless. Suddenly, the whispers escalated into ghastly shrieks, drowning out everything else. I stumbled forward, pressed against the peeling wallpaper, as shadows danced wildly along the walls. In the murky depths of that surreal blackness, something began to emerge: not just visions, but a presence. It was a dense energy, palpable and suffocating, looming just behind me. The frigid air warped, and I sensed movement. Spinning around, I encountered the figure again, but this time it was closer, its features becoming clearer. It was me, an uncanny copy of me, yes, vacant but filled with profound sorrow, a twisted smile spreading across its ghostly face, like playing a cruel game of make-believe. "Help me," it whispered, the voice like sandpaper dragging over stone. I wanted to turn away, but I was entranced. The specter reached out, fingers elongated and gnarled as if longing to break through the veil that separated the living from the dead. "Sick," I choked out, my throat dry and burning. "What are you?" But it only smiled wider, the shadows intertwining with the laughter echoing throughout the hall, creating a cacophony of sorrow and malevolence. I felt my knees buckle, the overwhelming pressure building up around me like a last breath before drowning. The apparition suddenly lunged forward, and with a surge of instinct, I pulled the trigger. The deafening blast shattered the silence. Yet instead of a crumple of flesh, the figure simply dissipated into a writhing cloud of smoke that enveloped me, its whispers now laced with a bone-chilling laughter as the sound echoed down the corridor. Then the world trembled around me. The walls began to warp, shadows contorting into grotesque forms. I gasped, not just for air, but for sanity. The echo of laughter grew louder, reverberating in my skull. It was overwhelming, pulsating with a sinister rhythm, pulling me further down the corridor. I stumbled back, trying to escape the madness, but it was too late. A door at the end of the hall burst open with a deafening crash, revealing a blinding light that beckoned me, pulsating with an urgency that felt like a dying heartbeat. I knew I shouldn't go toward it, but my curiosity fought against my fear. Then I heard Ida's shriek that didn't belong to this world, slicing through the air. It wasn't just any scream. It was a scream filled with the essence of betrayal and anguish, the voice of the victim from my past. And in that moment, with horror gripping my very soul, I knew I had no choice. Before I could think, I took a step forward, drawn by that haunting call, the doorway of light swallowing me whole. But as I crossed the threshold, the ground beneath me caved in, and I plummeted into the darkness, the familiar echoes of the past spiraling into chaos around me. "Help me." The voice echoed, growing louder as I fell, deeper and deeper into torment. And just before everything turned to black, I felt a hand grasp my ankle, pulling me down with it. I screamed, but no sound came out as the void consumed me, carrying me toward an unknown fate, leaving behind the memory of terror. Falling through the suffocating blackness felt like an eternity, each tortured moment weighed down by the ghosts of yesteryears. My body twisted and turned, unrestrained by gravity, spiraling through shadows and memory-shattered glass and broken bones. The hand gripping my ankle was cold, agonizing, and the shrill screams echoed around me, a chorus of desperate souls crying for justice, redemption, and release. Finally, I landed with a bone-jarring thud on a cold, damp surface. The world spun, and as my vision cleared, I found myself sprawled in a vast, murky chamber, illuminated only by an eerie, greenish glow that slithered across the walls like serpents in the night. A putrid stench invaded my senses, an overwhelming mix of rot and decay. Where am I? I rasped, my voice hoarse, swallowed by the envelope of despair that blanketed the air. Then, the shadows began to gather, slinking toward me like predators circling a wounded prey. My heart pounded in response, a primal drumbeat warning me of the imminent danger. As I tried to get to my feet, another shriek cut through the stagnant air. This one was familiar, the victim's voice, a memory so raw it gripped at my insides. Answer for your sins. It howled, a chilling wail that clawed at my sanity. Stop, I shouted, though my words felt feeble in the deafening echo of her anguish. It was a cruel irony that I, a cop, had failed to protect her. I stumbled forward, my instincts kicking in despite the surreal horror of my surroundings. The ethereal glow grew stronger as I moved, revealing the flickering outline of long-forgotten faces etched in the stones, the human forms twisted in agony, caught forever in this hellish limbo. My breath caught in my throat. These were victims, survivors of tragic stories, souls reaching out from the mounting darkness. But before I could comprehend the full horror of my situation, the walls trembled, and silhouettes began to take shape, rising from the very shadows that suffered in torment. They were faces I recognized, people I had encountered in life, mingled with the specters of the fallen before me. Each one bore expressions of fear, desperation, and despair. They reached for me, mouths moving in garbled whispers, pleading for help, for absolution. Solve the riddle, one spectral figure rasped, its face a contorted mask of anguish. Save us. Tell me how. I pleaded, panic rising in my chest as I could feel their collective sorrow pressing down on me like the weight of the world. Each touch from their spectral hands sent chilling shocks through my skin, igniting a fierce longing to save them. Find the truth, another echoed, her voice fading into the morass, leaving me deafened and alone in the unrelenting darkness. You know? But then came a far more sinister whisper, cutting through the confusion like a jagged knife. You will find them, but at what cost? The hand that had once gripped my ankle materialized before me. I was entranced by its grotesque beauty, the bony fingers elegant yet horrifying. A shadowy form emerged from beneath, quicker than lightning, and suddenly that distorted reflection of myself materialized again, now towering over the morass of faces. Why are you here? I choked out, fear bubbling within me like boiling water, tethering my senses on the edge of reason. Because you needed to see, it replied, its voice now a mocking echo of my own, every inflection infused with disdain. You wanted to know, didn't you? What horror it means to be judged, to haunt the boundaries of your own conscience. I am your reckoning. The chamber trembled again, and the shape shifted, converting into 1,000 distorted faces screaming with the same haunting question. Will you save us, or will you join us? Without warning, the ground beneath me began to split open, fissures growing wider like jagged mouths eager to devour me whole. A rumble of thunder shook the very fabric of this wretched place, and the souls screamed louder, intertwining with the howls of vengeance, a whirlwind of fury. Time is slipping away, the twisted version of me stated, tilting its head. In a mocking gesture. Choose. As the abyss widened, I was dragged to the precipice, teetering on the edge of madness and despair. My heart raced, caught between the voices of innocence demanding justice and the sinister laughter of my own dark reflection intoning cruel truths, resonating the burden of the blame I carried for so many failures. The light flickered, ever so enticing and treacherous, urging me into the darkness below. Save them. The cries echoed, and with a desperate flinch, I felt the icy grip of shadows wrap around my wrists, yanking me downward. I braced for impact, teetering helplessly, when a sudden realization convulsed through me. How could I save them, if I couldn't even save myself? As the void consumed me, I loosed a final scream, my voice swallowed whole by the echoes of 1,000,000 lost souls. No. But before I knew it, I was falling once again, deeper into despair, into a place where the truths I sought twisted into grotesque nightmares. And in that echoing confinement, a whisper tickled my ear. You can't run forever. In that moment, a dreadful thought crystallized in my mind. What if I had already lost my chance? What if I would forever wander this haunted realm, searching for a way out that no longer existed? And just as I braced for the final plunge into darkness, I heard a voice familiar and close, piercing through my mind with haunting clarity. Help me after all this time. I am still here. I didn't recognize it at first, but the growing fear solidified into something far worse than dread. It was recognition, a name I wished to forget. And with that, my world shattered once more. The fall stopped abruptly, my body landing in what felt like a pile of damp earth and writhing roots. A shiver slithered down my spine as I stood up, the weight of the past still pressing upon me. I blinked away the film of pain and darkness encasing my eyes, and the chamber before me came into sudden clarity. The landscape morphed into a sepulchral garden, where gnarled trees twisted upward into an oppressive gray sky. Each trunk seemed to house grieving faces, their expressions contorted into an eternal cry of agony. I stumbled back, overwhelmed by the sheer horror of what my senses were revealing. "Help me, please," the voice floated closer, entangled with whispers of anger that danced around me like an unseen storm. Hollowed-out eyes within the bark of a nearby tree widened in a plea, drawing my attention. "Who's there?" I shouted against the encroaching despair, desperately seeking light in this submerged nightmare. "What do you want?" But the only response was more confusion. Root systems pulsed beneath my feet, throbbing like a heart in the clutches of dread. Out of nowhere, roots shot up, latching onto my ankles and tugging me down, grounding me to an unforgiving reality. I pulled back, horrified, and yet from the depths of the soil beneath me, a pair of hands erupted, clawing upward, grasping for air. "Help me, save me," the voice came again, soaked with sorrow that echoed deep within my heart. The pale hands emerged from the earth like a macabre flower blooming with despair, and I recognized the manicured fingers. Those were her hands. "Rachel," I whispered, blood rushing in my ears. Memories cascaded back, a barrage of emotions surging like a tidal wave. The unique polish she always wore, the silver ring on her finger, the last time I had seen her, alive and full of dreams. "Save me," her voice was softer now, a haunting melody that tugged at every regret, every ounce of guilt I had tried to bury with all the work and distractions I could muster as a cop. "Rachel," I croaked, falling to my knees beside her, grasping the cool, clammy hands that desperately reached for me. How can I save you?" Suddenly, the air around us stiffened. The whispers that had once sounded pleading now morphed into frenzied snarls, echoing off the shaded contours of the garden. The trees stirred ominously, as if they were awakening from a long slumber, and it was not just her voice I heard. The souls of the damned rose around me, writhing in pain, their faces suddenly concrete as if molded from resin. "Your time is short." The tortured souls shrieked in unison, their outstretched hands curling toward Rachel, pulling at her in a wicked dance of despair. "You cannot save what is lost." Rachel's face changed, her pleading eyes filled with dread as she fought against the grip of shadows. "They're coming for you. Please, you must," but her words were swallowed by the cacophony crescendoing around us. The storm of wailing souls wrapped tighter around her, their murmurs now a devastating thunderstorm of blame and vengeance. "Forget her, you fool," echoed the distorted voices. "We need you. We demand you. Stop," I cried out, grappling with the frantic impressions of lost souls threatening to drag me under. I had to save her. I had to mend the pain, to correct my failures, as if tearing apart the fabric of reality itself could bring her back. The ground shifted beneath me, and the pull of the void churned violently once again. But I refused to yield. "I will save you, Rachel. I won't let you go." As if my defiance summoned a horrific force, the figures of anguish around me contorted, faces melting into a morbid expression of fury, fueled by an indignation I could not comprehend. They twisted painfully, locked in an eternal embrace of anger and betrayal, and with a deafening roar, the walls of the garden began to close in, suffocating the light and choking the breath from my lungs. Just when I thought all was lost, a blinding light pierced through the chaos, illuminating a pathway, luring me with a promise beyond anguish. But entwined within the radiance was a shadow, a figure cloaked in darkness who stepped forward with a chilling familiarity. And then it hit me with crimson clarity. This was not just a realm of lost souls. It was a battleground between entwined destinies, and I was at the very heart of the showdown. The grim figure before me wore the face of a man I arrested years ago, a serial killer whose spirit was as twisted as his crimes, laughing in delight as he recognized my horror. "Welcome to my paradise," he rasped, eyes glinting with malevolent mirth. "Now, let's see if you can save the one you love or join us forever in this beautiful misery." In that moment, with Rachel's fading voice crying in my heart and the menace of evil growing ever closer, I realized this confrontation was just beginning. Would I succumb to the pressure of the past, or would I expose the truth buried beneath layers of sorrow and malice? And, standing between two realms of horror, I felt the ground begin to tremble again, a fissure opening wide beneath me. If I didn't act fast, if I didn't dig deep into the truth I had buried, I might lose everything that greeted me with terror, not just Rachel, but the very part of my soul that had come to this wretched place searching for redemption. "Run," Rachel whispered, her voice a fading echo in the void, and I pressed forward, heart pounding, racing against the shadows that threatened to consume me. But as my feet hit the ground, the chilling laughter returned, taunting, echoing through the chambers of despair. "Not all truths are worth discovering, let the exploration begin." And then, without warning, the darkness surged in, engulfing me in its relentless embrace, pulling me deep into the heart of the unknown. The darkness swallowed me whole, a suffocating cloak that drowned out reason and warped my perception. I stumbled through the void, my once steady resolve now chipped away by fear, every heartbeat resonating against the horror echoing around me. Shadows lunged, flickering at the edge of my vision, elongated fingers clawing at my sanity, whispering sweet lies that twisted through the abyss. "Rachel." Her name slipped from my lips in a desperate prayer, but the echoes came back distorted, a mocking mockery of her essence, dragging me down a spiral of anguish. "Help me" resonated, grounding me even deeper in this nightmare. The visions of her faded, replaced by faces from the past, anguished and torn. I could see the victims, the traces of blood still fresh in the corners of my memory. Their silent screams echoed off the walls of this otherworldly prison. The ground beneath me flickered like a one-way mirror, screens of alternate realities shifting and warping with grotesque familiarity. I saw Rachel, tied to a chair, eyes wide with terror, pleading for my rescue that had never come. The scene flickered into another. A dark figure prowled around her, the same serial killer stepping out from the shadows. His twisted smile sent shards of ice crawling down my spine as he cut slowly through the air with a blade glistening under an unseen moon. "Doesn't she look pretty?" he rasped, the malice in his laughter echoing around me, distorting the very fabric of the void itself. With a flick of his wrist, the image stretched and morphed above me, igniting an uncontrollable rage. "Shut up," I roared, yet my own voice sounded feeble against the overwhelming despair vibrating through the darkness. "Stop this. You're just a monster, but you're the one who allowed me to live," he responded smugly. "You're the one who let me slip through fingers lined with guilt. And now, in this twilight of dreams, I revel in your pain." In that sickening moment, light exploded behind me, a shard of hope distorting into a searing pain as I was drawn toward it. My feet moved instinctively as the remnants of my consciousness clung to the vision of Rachel intertwined in swirling horrors. The void screamed and twisted as hands reached out to me, grasping and pinching at my soul. "Save her," they wailed, each voice laced with a trembling desperation that tugged at the very core of my existence. Each cry a reminder of the choices I had made. I pushed forward, fueled by guilt and love, the light becoming a beacon amidst the fevered chaos that I slid through the spectral fabric of pain and grief, each step clawing at my chest like knives scraping against bare skin until I burst through. I found myself standing on the edge of that accursed garden, now a madness-laden circle of twisted trees and shrieking winds. If I was going to save Rachel, I needed to confront the one who had taken her from me. I had to face him head-on. "Show yourself," I shouted, breath curling around me like mist, panic boiling in my veins. "Did you think you could run away from your own shadows?" he taunted, the voice echoing through my mind, growling, scratching at the back of my thoughts. "You brought me here. You stewed in your own darkness for so long, and now you've stoked the fire." A presence flickered, materializing from the trees, grotesque, and consuming like smoke given form. He appeared, more real than ever before, eyes gleaming with bloodlust, parched for revenge. "Just you and me now, detective," he sneered, his once familiar face warped and monstrous. "Let's see how far you've come. Or perhaps you haven't come at all." Panic surged as he launched forward, the air sharp with the scent of decay and blood. I felt it too. The swell of darkness was not just his, it was in me as well, feeding from the trauma lodged deep within, threatening to square my heart in an iron grip. "Rachel," I yelled again, pulling on the tether of our love, desperate for her connection to draw me back from this precipice of despair. Yet as I gazed into his eyes, I glimpsed something else, a flicker of misplaced compassion. For just a moment, I didn't see just a monster. I saw a reflection of my own failures, a shattered mirror. Could it be that I was the killer lurking within, waiting to emerge? But before I could process this mounting terror, the earth trembled, the ground cracked open beneath my feet, revealing swirling shadows of despair swirling and beckoning me down. Panic surged as the darkness throbbed, pulling me, dragging me with insatiable force. "Join us," the voices cooed, intoxicated by the chaos that enveloped me. "Embrace the shadow, and you too will understand true freedom." I barely managed to throw one leg back, fighting against the force of the abyss, but only for a moment. Then, with one agonizing downward thrust, the landscape blackened. The last thing I felt was the warmth of Rachel's fading memories slipping from my grasp, the cracks in my heart widening, as if ready to swallow everything whole into the maw of the unknown. Suddenly, just as darkness was about to consume me, her voice surged again closer to the surface, saying something I couldn't quite grasp. A final plea, a chilling question that pierced through the chaos, ringing through every ounce of despair that surrounded me. "Will you save me, or will you become the monster?" Flickering images of my past trailed behind me as the world around me spiraled. I grasped just one truth. This battle was not just for Rachel, but for my very soul. And as the abyss pulled me deeper, a pair of hands emerged, the same pale, manicured fingers reaching through the shadows toward me. But they weren't hers. They were cold, chilling, and knowing, beckoning me into the depths of horror that awaited. "What have you done, detective?" A voice seeped through the air, echoing with satisfaction and betrayal. With one last gasp of defiance, I plunged into the depth of the unknown, not knowing what awaited, but desperately trying to grasp anything that could keep me from becoming the very monster I had sworn to fight against. The abyss throbbed with a sinister warmth, wrapping around me like a suffocating hug. It whispered sweet promises of despair, pulling me deeper into its horrific embrace. Images rushed past, voiceless specters from my past, their eyes hollow and pleading, forever echoing in my mind. I could sense the weight of their anguish, sliding into me like a venomous mist, amplifying the swirling dread of what I might become. The ground beneath my feet was now a churning mass of shadows, pulsating as if it were a living entity, writhing in its own twisted anticipation. I fell, not into darkness, but into a nightmare drenched in a sickly light that shimmered like oil on water. It felt both familiar and foreign, a realm crafted from shards of my own fragmented consciousness, a place where the horrors I suppressed took on a corporeal form. I finally landed on solid ground, if it could even be called that. I felt a chill run through me, each breath a cloud of cold that echoed back, mocking my existence. The air was thick with the metaphysical residue of the once violent chaos that ruled this realm, teasing out memories of nights I had spent hunting monsters like him. But there was something darker here, gnawing at the edges of my sanity, intertwining with the fabric of every horror I had faced. Shapes flitted around me, grotesque amalgamations of fear and regret, and I suddenly understood that I wasn't merely fighting against a single killer. I was locked in combat against the embodiment of every darkness I had ever ignored, every wound I had ever inflicted. "Are you lost, detective?" The voice slithered into the air, a cruel melody pitched to coax out my terror. It belonged to an entity draped in shadows, half-formed and incessantly shifting. "You are where you belong now. The thin line between the hunted and the hunter has dissolved, and only we remained." My heart raced. It was as though I had stumbled upon a gallery of my own failures. I could see Rachel there, shackled to a bleak pillar carved from my recollections, an altar to every moment I had abandoned her. Desperation clawed at my throat as I reached out, fingers straining toward her, hoping she would bloom into existence, free from this twisted relic of my guilt. Instead, her bonds tightened, pulling her further from view, while the void unleashed a cacophony of laughter, disembodied whispers twisted into visceral screams, feathering through the thick clouds. You let her go. You chose blind justice over her. Now she pays the price of your failure, no. I shouted, fueled by a desperate righteousness that bordered on madness. I will free her. Free her? The chuckle rumbled from the shadows, a twisted echo of my own conscience. What if your freedom lies in helping her embrace this darkness? Have you ever considered the truth, detective? The swirling scene before me shifted violently. I was transported to a memory of chaos, the night I first confronted him, the killer. Everything flooded back, the sweat-soaked shivers of adrenaline on the cold pavement, the panic in Rachel's eyes, the flickering lights of the police cars illuminating the horror we faced. And in that moment, I saw not just my fear, but also something far darker lurking in my mind, feeding from my anguish. The monster I had pursued was but an extension of the terror rooted deep within me, waiting to awaken. In this maelstrom of guilt, the spectral figure of my killer separated from the writhing shadows, his face an eerie mirror of my own. You see it now? His laughter danced around the edges of my psyche, serenading my inner demons. We're bound, you and I. Your fear, your failures, they nourish me. With every ounce of horror, I screamed, drawing from a deep well of unresolved rage. I will not let you consume me. As if my defiance ignited a fuse, the ground trembled. With a sudden lurch, the dark entity seized my mind, conjuring a vision of Rachel caught in a storm of chaos, her cries echoing through my crumbling resolve. Just as I surged forward, the world imploded outward, shades of reality crashing like waves against a horrid shore. The landscape warped, flickering between fragments of memories and fears. Will you embrace your darkness, or will you fight? The voice taunted, unfurling claws of despair around my heart. And then, unexpectedly, fragments of light burst forth through the darkness. Conjured images of humanity, laughter, and warmth shone through like benevolent spirits flickering in a darkened room. But just as quickly, the shadows surged back, swallowing the light and drawing me under where screams erupted with piercing clarity. Detective, will you deliver the final blow? I was engulfed in an unbearable pressurous storm of doubts swirling and gathering, coalescing into a single command that left me gasping. With one last jolt, I plunged toward the chaos. But in a heartbeat the terrain shifted, and I tripped, sent spiraling toward a face that was neither mine nor his, but a grotesque amalgamation of both. And then I heard her voice again, faint but resolute amid the cacophony. Will you save me, or become just another fragment in this darkness? As the face morphed into Rachel's, I was seized by the icy grasp of realization. I was both the hero and the monster. The line had blurred, and the darkness was awakening within me. Jarring, the shadows rippled as the true horror revealed itself. As I hesitated, a screeching laughter resonated through the madness. The last remnants of my resolve began to slip away, sucked into the icy hold of despair. With a screech of terror, my heart echoed the question, what have I become? As the shadows began to separate me from her forever, an exclamation tore through my thoughts, your monster awaits. I could only scream as the ground swallowed me whole once more, but this time for good, leaving a silence in my wake, a gaping void where hope used to reside. I drifted through the vast obscurity, a formless puppet suspended between dread and memory. The last vestiges of Rachel's agonizing cries clawed at my mind, reverberating against the walls of nothingness like a sound of a distant bell, haunting and irretrievable. My body a vessel of despair. As I fell deeper into the gaping maw of the abyss, I could feel it changing, contorting in ways that defied understanding. The air thickened, charged with a palpable sensation, as if the shadows themselves were sentient creatures flitting around me, eager to devour the remnants of my sanity. Each passing moment delivered a cruel reminder of my failures, and the whispers began anew, invasive and suffocating. You aren't worthy, they hissed. wrapping around me with an insistent grip. You couldn't save her. You will never escape. I in the void. Indistinct shapes emerged, phosphorescent threads stitching together a tapestry of my darkest thoughts. Scenes unfurled like sickeningly familiar nightmares, each stitch a moment I wished I could erase. I watched myself, a pale, trembling specter interrogating witnesses, the desperation carved into my features a testament to the burden I carried. Why didn't you stop him? Rachel's frightened gaze glared back at me, her disappointment palpable as her essence bled into the darkness. The fabric of the void rippled violently, and suddenly I was yanked forth into yet another memory. A flurry of police lights strobed through fog like malevolent spirits. My heart raced, caught in the thrum of panic, and woven into this relentless reel of torment was the face of the killer, that twisted grin spreading like oil across the water. The policeman in me surged, ready for battle, yet the warrior spirit began to wither, shackled to this relentless turmoil. Finish what you started. The killer's voice sliced through the haze, seductive and taunting. All it takes is a flicker, a small choice. The hunter could become the hunted, or perhaps his voice vacillated, darkly amused. Perhaps it's time you embrace your true self. Suddenly, the shadows elongated, shifting to become corporeal forms. Figures writhed, as if emerging from a deep-sea nightmare. They began to coalesce into previous victims, their faces twisted with anguish. Detective, they lamented in agony, was it worth it? You judged us not knowing the truth. We are here because of you. In a fateful surge, I lunged back, fumbling for a resolution that would never be. The very ground beneath transformed into rippled screams, an anguished chorus united in their despair. Every step I took accelerated my descent, every heartbeat a reminder that I was diving too deep into a darkness I had once vowed to combat. Gritting my teeth, I pushed through the tempest of accusations and doubts, defiant, though the truth clawed at the back of my mind. Then, something shifted. A sudden lurch in energy cascaded through the shadows. A fissure birthed a vision of Rachel, a shimmering silhouette trapped in a web of darkness, eyes wide with panic, throat taut from screams unheard. Detective, save me, she pleaded, her voice strained as though coaxed from the deepest recesses of despair. Don't worry, I whispered, though the sting of hopelessness tightened around my chest. I reached out, but as I did, the shadows congealed and divided, revealing the looming figure of the killer, mirroring my fears and ready to shatter my resolve once more. He stepped between us, smirking, your efforts are futile, just like every choice you've ever made. The sight of Rachel's distorted form, fighting against the snaring shadows, ignited a primal rage within me. My pulse raced, fueling an instinct so deep it burned through the void. You will not have her, I screamed, my hands clenched into fists, prepared to strike back against the foul embodiment of my failures. I am you, the figure hissed, contorting into the shape of my severest doubts. I am the monster you've become. Let go and accept what lurks in your heart. I waged a silent war within. The shadows coiled tighter, squeezing at my muscles until they screamed for release. Despair bled into me, saturating every ounce of dread. Part of me craved the darkness, yearned to understand the power latent in surrender. And yet, another part of me grasped at the threads of hope, relentless and unyielding. Fight it. Rachel's echoed voice reached through the tumult, struggling against the currents dragging her deeper into a hellscape of shadows. Don't let them win. The paradox tightened further. The very essence of the demon I faced was born from everything I had failed to confront within myself. The realization washed over me a tsunami of internal conflict. I could either succumb to the shadow that craved to consume me whole or rise up, fighting not just for Rachel, but for the soul I feared I had already lost. As I opened my mouth to roar my defiance against the void, I felt the climax of power building deep within me, a force charged by my desperation. But before I could unleash it, a jagged silence fell. The shadows converged, forcing everything into a static moment of anguish. And as I prepared my final charge, it was seized by an electrifying jolt. A sudden burst of light tore through the darkness, an effulgent ray piercing the shroud of despair, illuminating the faces of the lost ones, exposing the truths manifested within me. And then everything imploded under the pressure of collective agony, dragging me with it, spiraling down yet again, not knowing where I would emerge. In the heart of the chaos, ensnared in the fabric of my own soul, two piercing words echoed, unrelenting in their finality. Choose wisely. And just as abruptly, a dark tendril shot forth, seizing me in its vice-like grip, wrenching me away from the light, pulling me back into the choking grasp of oblivion, leaving only a terrifying whisper curling through the air. The choice was never yours. A disorienting pull catapulted me from the shards of light, hurling me into a frigid silence that wrapped itself around my throat like a noose. I found myself standing not on solid ground, but rather a slick, pulsating surface that throbbed underfoot, slick with dark fluid that seemed to echo with the cries of the damned. Panic surged through me, the primal instinct to flee overpowered by the sickening dread that coiled around my heart. The shadows closed in, but here they were different, more tangible, more menacing. I could hear them breathing, a soft, ragged sound that twisted into the rhythm of a heartbeat. The pervasive sense of being observed prickled my skin, a dozen eyes lurking just beyond the edges of my vision, always watching, always waiting to as I squinted into the murky depths. Phosphorescent eyes blinked awake beneath the surface, glowing with malice. It was as if the ground itself held the tortured spirits of the lost, each gaze a plea for freedom, each flicker a taunt of endless suffering. You should never have come here, they whispered, 1,000 voices entwined in sinister harmony. This is where all choices culminate. Choices? I croaked, my throat dry. I've already made my choice. The conviction resonating in my tone belied the turmoil within, but the darkness merely laughed a low, guttural sound that echoed through the stagnant art I in that moment. Reality twisted like a funhouse mirror, contorting into grotesque recreations of my past. Familiar landscapes blurred ghostly outlines of crime, scenes morphed into comprehension of betrayal and guilt. I watched a spectral replay of the moments leading up to Rachel's death, each detail unsettlingly precise. I could see myself arresting the wrong man, my conviction unwavering as the real killer slipped through my fingers like smoke, laughing at my incompetence. The weight of that betrayal pressed down on my chest, suffocating to "Oh, you see now?" A voice rasped beside me, slithered from the depths of gloom. It was the killer himself, contorted yet undeniably familiar. All of them laid waste, their lives nothing more than collateral damage because of your failings. You and we are the same. I recoiled, forcing myself to meet his gaze, which swirled with malevolent amusement. "Am nothing like you," I shouted, the conviction wavering under the filaments of my fear. "Are you so sure?" He sneered, and suddenly I was pulled back into a torrent, an amniotic flood of memories folding over me. I felt as though I had become part of that same fluid, entwined in the very essence of the damned. Faces morphed around my victims, reaching out with haunted eyes, mouths agape in silent screams, dripping with endless sorrow. "You did this," they shrieked in unison, their voices merging into a cacophony of despair. Vivid images rushed past a woman in a red dress, stumbling under the weight of her reality, another victim's visage twisted in eternal pain. Each one a reminder, a fragment of guilt that coalesced into something monstrous within me. "Let me show you," the killer murmured, reaching out with grasping hands, the shadows curling around him like tendrils, slithering toward me in seductive promise. And then, like a horror film unraveling, I was thrown into a nightmarish sequence. The memories blurred together: police interviews, treacherous silence in a darkened alley, damning evidence concealed by my own blindness. There I stood, the same pale, trembling figure lost amidst chaos, submerged in oblivion. Crawling, clawing for something to hold on to, grasping at hope only to grasp at air. I felt impotent in the face of my memories. In that swirling miasma of regret, something shifted. The grotesque figures of the lost began to morph into pale versions of myself, each reflecting lost choices and missed opportunities. "You seek absolution, yet you walk hand in hand with despair," they crooned, their voices a haunting lullaby that both comforted and terrified. The ground beneath my feet began to tremble, fissures opening, laced with glowing tendrils pulling me deeper into the abyss. I stammered backward, desperate to grip onto anything solid. But waning resolve sank me further. Encompassing shadows drew closer, a chorus of forgotten faces sneering at my weakness. From the belly of the darkness, the killer's laughter rose, resonant and mocking. You are trapped. This is your reckoning. It's time to embrace who you've become. In that moment, fear shifted into revelation. I felt the undercurrents of power churning within me, a tempest of rage and sorrow boiling to the surface. I envisioned Rachel, her face a blend of horror and hope caught in the web, eternally lost unless I found the strength to defy the inevitable. With every fiber of my being, I screamed a primordial roar, fueled by the need to face this terror head-on. Arm raised, preparing to strike back against the darkness, I was suddenly pulled taut by a different voice, the familiar, soft ring of Rachel's desperation, hauntingly close. Detective, save me. You still have a chance. Choose. Reeling at the sound, the fabric of the void began to fracture, blinding light bursting through the cracks, illuminating senses long dulled by despair. Yet, as the shards of reality began to cascade around me, the overwhelming weight of choice descended once more. And then, just as clarity washed over me, I felt a piercing pain in my chest, a dagger of darkness plunging deep, revealing the horrifying truth. The killer stood before me, his hand withdrawn, dripping with my own blood, a wicked grin twisting his features. Remember, he hissed, you were taught that mercy would be your downfall. I've come to collect. The dizzying synthesis of agony and clarity swirled within me, and I teetered on the brink of madness, grappling with my reality. No, I gasped, realization slamming into me, my world fracturing. And there, in the shadow-soaked depths, the last fleeting glimmer of light flickered away, leaving behind not just despair, but questions whose answers threatened to consume me whole. Entrapped in terror, my fate now ominously intertwined with the killer's chilling promise. You will never escape. As darkness closed in, the last remnant of sanity slipped from my grasp. Transfixed by the festering fear, I felt cold fingers clutch my heart, a silent verdict echoing through the shadowy void. It's time to choose your end. The echoes of the killer's laughter reverberated around me, filling the space with a cloying dread that coiled tightly around my throat. My heart pounded against the confines of my chest, each thump resonating with the unspeakable horror of my situation. The darkness wasn't just a veil, it was alive. It wrapped its insidious tendrils around my limbs like a serpent seeking to constrict any chance of escape. I yelled into the suffocating blackness, my mind racing against the tide of despair that threatened to pull me under. But my voice was swallowed by the shadows, the sound replaced by whispers that slithered into my thoughts, relentless and intrusive. You shall never know peace. You belong to us now. I stumbled forward on the slick ground, my hands grappling for balance, clawing at the slick surface that pulsed with a cold heartbeat. I forced myself to remember Rachel's face, the way her eyes sparkled with life, the warmth of her laughter. I was standing on the brink of losing the last vestige of connection to my humanity, but every thought of her filled me with greater despair. Her ethereal presence flickered like a distant star, only to hide again in the dark. A low rumbling sound began to rise from beneath my feet, growing in intensity until the surface shuddered violently, causing pools of darkness to ripple like disturbed waters. I caught a brief glimpse of something formulating within them, blurry figures twisting and writhing, their faces obscured but unmistakably anguished. I forced myself to push on, though each step felt heavier than the last, drenched in an invisible weight. Suddenly, a sharp cry echoed through the abyss. Detective! The voice pierced through the shadows, raw and desperate. My heart seized in my chest, recognizing Rachel's tone, laced with terror that beckoned me. Help me. I'm here. Rachel. I screamed back, the name tasting bitter and laced with a sense of urgency. I could feel the vibrations of her call ringing through me, igniting a flicker of hope amid the encroaching dread. Where are you? The darkness responded with a cacophony of hissing whispers. Follow the light. They breathed, a promise laced with malice. I was on the verge of giving into the overwhelming agony, but Rachel's voice surged once more, full of pleading. Please, don't listen to them. The shadows closed tighter around me, a draping shroud that slithered against my skin, whispering dark secrets of despair and loss. My foot slipped, and I felt the ground give way, unveiling an expanse of icy void beneath a yawning chasm that seemed to invite me in, promising liberation from this torment. But at what cost? My grasp on sanity teetered as it offered the intoxicating allure of forgetfulness. Choose. The darkness roared, coiling deeper into my psyche, teasing out the shadows of my greatest fears of loss and judgment. I staggered, feeling that weight once more pressing against my chest reminds me of Rachel's last moments. Each pull from the shadows seemed to echo her final words. Detective, I trusted you. My heart sank, a deep rift of guilt splitting open old wounds. I'm trying to save you, I shouted defiantly, brushing against the fabric of reality, desperate to reignite the spark of purpose that had once burned brightly in me. I refused to be a pawn in this cruel game, the darkness hissed, vibrating with a sinister delight. You have always been a pawn, holding the strings of your own despair. Then something shifted in the darkness. A gleam reflected in the shadows, illuminating a figure just beyond my reach. I hesitated, my breath hitching in my throat. A pale hand stretched toward me, the light flickering like a dying ember. Was this Rachel? The flickering presence beckoned me closer, wading through the thickening shadows that battled against the warmth of hope. Trust me. Take my hand. I can lead you out. Her voice so raw, so full of pain and expectation pulled me closer, like a moth drawn to a flame that I lunged forward, desperation igniting in my veins, ready to grasp that ephemeral connection. But just as our hands began to draw near, the darkness let out a terrible howl, a visceral scream that vibrated through my bones. The veil of shadows ripped apart, unleashing a whirlwind that pulled me away from her grasp, forcefully tearing me back into the inky void. And oh, I won't lose you again, I cried, reaching for her as the false light shifted further away, the scorching sting of loss biting into my heart. But the shadows swirling around me were relentless, rolling like waves, crashing downwards into an abyss that promised only despair. As I plummeted into the darkness, the killer's visage appeared, face twisted into a grotesque mask of triumph. You cannot save her. You are bound by this legacy of failure. He laughed, a sound that echoed like a tolling bell of doom. And just when I felt my consciousness starting to slip, the world spinning out of control, I woke drenched in sweat and gasping for breath. I was back in my own world, confined within the walls of my dim, flickering apartment, but something was horribly amiss. The shadows in the corners danced unnaturally, moving with a life of their own, growing thicker, whispering words I could almost comprehend. And then, a realization struck me like a lightning bolt. The reflection in the mirror across the dimly lit room did not belong to me. A shadowed figure loomed behind me, lips curling into a sinister grin, eyes wide with anticipation. You're home now, detective, it breathed, its voice an echo of my own. Welcome back. My heart plummeted. Desperation clawed at my insides, knowing I had unwittingly brought the darkness home with me, and it was hungry for the choices I had yet to make. I stumbled back in a panic, every ounce of courage draining from my body as the reflection twisted and contorted, embodying elements of my very worst fears. Shadows loomed thick along the walls, stretching like taunting fingers that reached out to entwine themselves with my existence. I am the monster, I thought, the very realization seeping in deeper than the shadows themselves. Welcome back, the figure echoed my voice, sending tremors through my veins. The walls pulsed like a living nightmare, and I could hear the phantoms of my past whispering their cruel truths, each one coiling around my mind like an unrelenting coil. My grip on reality faltered, memories flooding my vision. Rachel, hauntingly vibrant, suffering, and pleading for an escape from the very darkness that now enveloped me. But the face staring back was mine, yet unmistakably twisted, burgeoning with the regret and blood of countless lost souls. You thought you could run and hide, didn't you? It laughed, a mixture of disdain and familiarity. You will never escape. You invited me in. In that moment, a torrent of clarity surged through me. Every grim choice, every neglect, washed over like a tidal wave, each one drowning me in the sin of complacency. No, I roared defiantly, But my voice was lost in the cacophony of regret that surrounded me, anguished screams of those I had failed, their faces twisting as they merged into the dark form before me. With each echo of their pleas, I felt the weight of my choices pulling tightly around my throat, squeezing out any light that remained. All the times I hesitated, every moment I had turned away in the face of danger, had dismissed warnings in pursuit of justice, coiled like venomous vipers ready to strike. You weren't a protector, detective. You were a coward hiding behind orders, it hissed with an eerie calm, as if it were the dark truth I had buried deep within. Now tell me, which one of your dark secrets do you wish to unveil first? My legs felt heavy, as if shackled by the very regret I was trying to escape. Get out, I screamed, pulling my gun from the waistband of my jeans, ready to shoot at the shadows that feasted on my fears. The flickering light bulb above cast brief spells of illumination, revealing fleeting images of Rachel entwined in those shadows. She was in pain, her face strained with agony as though every heartbeat echoed her desire for justice. The figure in the mirror laughed again, the sound jagged and mocking. You think a gun can save you? You were the one who pulled the trigger long ago. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut, remembering the fateful night when I had faced the killer, the one I thought I had arrested, finding nothing but a puppet master who had played at the edges of my consciousness. Every choice you make led you to this moment, detective. And now, it's time to choose again. The laughter grew louder, the rooms reverberating with a symphony of broken promises and lost chances. I staggered backward, every reflection of the past crashing against the layers of despair I had wrapped around myself. Was I the hero or the villain? Did it even matter? I looked at my reflection, eyes burning with the weight of understanding. I choose, I whispered, desperation pouring out. I choose to free the ones I lost. I won't let your shadows consume me. Just then, the walls around me began to ripple, the echoes of the tortured souls rising in fury, swirling around the figure that was once my own. You have to decide, detective. Do you save the living or do you join the damned? In a moment of fleeting clarity, the truth struck me. The shadows were not just prisoners. They were a part of me, the manifestations of my own dark soul, terrifying and grotesque, but also a chance to find salvation amidst the sorrow. I could reshape this place, mold it into something that had a chance for redemption. My heart raced as I pointed the gun, not at the figure, but towards the walls. I choose to expose the truth. I bellowed. I choose to bring the shadows to light. The echoes replied with crashing roars, shadows wrestling against the containment that held them captive. The figure's laughter turned into an anguished scream as the room twisted painfully, blinding light breaking through the darkness, illuminating forgotten souls and the desolate remnants of my own guilt. I felt Rachel's presence stirring within me, the weight of her truth, and with a fierce roar, I dropped the weapon. This ends now. I will not turn away again. As I faced the darkness that had once threatened to consume me whole, the shadows recoiled, screams morphing into desperate whispers pleading for release. The figures within the despair, the lost souls that had sought justice, surged forward, merging with the light that had infiltrated the darkness. No, the figure cried out, a death rattle of desperation. But it was already lost, dissolving away in shimmering streams of potential forged by the truth. I could feel the powerful surge, sweeping through the remnants of shame, washing over the guilt I had gathered like a shroud. I did not just free them, I embraced them as a part of me, born by my choices and regrets. And then, in that moment of revelation, I glimpsed Rachel standing before me, a vivid specter of light glowing against the remnants of darkness. Her sorrowful smile ignited something deep within me, cleansing the burdens I had carried for far too long. You did it, she breathed, her voice reverberating like a heartbeat, full of warmth and love. You set us all free. But just as hope soared, the shadows reminded me that not all choices come without consequence. But you still have a choice, detective, they sneered, the echoes wrapping around me once more. To stay or to leave this place. But understand, once you leave, you may never return. I understood then, as I stood before the dazzling opening now shimmering with radiant light, that the real horror does not rest solely in the shadows when you embrace the truth of your own soul. The choice to walk away would mean leaving behind the demons that I had overcome, yet I yearned to carry their echoes with me. destined to battle again another day. I will hold your courage in my heart, I whispered, the last act of bravery curling around me. And as I stepped into the light, the whispers grew fainter, but the laughter of the shadows lingered long after I crossed the threshold, a reminder of the darkness that always awaited. Yet as the door closed behind me, leaving faint traces of the horror I had faced, I couldn't shake off the icy chill that rushed through my veins, and turned to view the apartment one last time. The flickering darkness was now just beyond the door, a palpable reminder of my choices, and as the door settled into place, the last whisper echoed in my mind: it wasn't over after all. Until we meet again.